I had decided I had just left medical school. I think it was 92. I had left medical school, took a year off, and I wanted to become a bodybuilder. I was bodybuilding, but I wanted to give it 100%. And I hadn't really started I hadn't really done any major cycles or anything like that yet. So I go, and my friend Doug takes me to Bob's house, and I'm posing for Bob. And, I tell Bob my whole story and everything like that. And Bob's like, well, I said, do you think I could ever win my class at a national level show? He's like, well, maybe you should go back to medical school.
I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
Is there any relation to having better sleep because of having taken a cheat meal before bed? I've tried this once a week for the past 4 weeks, and it's worked every single time.
Carbs make it easy to sleep. There's no doubt about that. That's for sure. And, anyone who's ever eaten a big meal and you go sit on the couch, you want to fall asleep right after that. Carbs, as Bleckman would say, carbs, tryptophan, increases tryptophan, which causes serotonin, release. So you feel good when you eat carbs, and you feel tired when you eat carbs, so you definitely get a better night's sleep after eating a big meal. Matter of fact, I'm not dieting now by any means, but a lot of times, like, I'll eat dinner, and then before bed, I'm like, I don't know if I want to eat another meal. It's already like midnight. I'm going to sleep in a half hour, and I'll have like 2 Quest cookies, and the Quest cookies, they're like 15 grams of protein a piece. So I eat 2 of them, so you get the 30 grams of protein. But they have there's very few net carbs in them. And sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night hungry because my blood sugar is a little low, And other times I'll eat, like, maybe I'll have leftover rice and like ground turkey or something like that I ate, or some of Carlo's chicken by the pound. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm kind of feel like eating a meal. And I'll eat a little meal while I'm watching TV, right before bed. And then I'll go lay down, and man, I fall asleep so easily, and I never wake up in the middle of the night. Matter of fact, I don't even pee as much because, the carbs hold water too. So if you're eating a very low carb meal before bed, a lot of times you'll be up peeing more frequently because you're not going to hold all the fluid that you drank, with that meal. So there's absolutely 100% truth to what you said.
Of these 3 that never turned pro, Matt Mendenhall, Edgar Fletcher, and Rory Liedlmeyer, who do you think would have made the best pro?
Mendenhall. I think Mendenhall had every body part. He had calves, he had legs, he had back, he had good abs, big arms, chest. I mean, he had it all. He just never really dialed in the conditioning the way he should have. And I don't know if he was distracted or what was going on with his life. I know he was dating Rachel McLeish for a while. And, Bob Grushkin was notorious. He used to say that, oh, he's too distracted. But whatever the case may be, I think he had the most potential. I think Edgar Fletcher was kind of like a little bit of a head case, and he liked to cheat on his diet. But I think that Mendenhall had a better physique, even though Edgar had that really small, waspy looking waist, but he had very high lats. Mendenhall's lats went right down to his hips. I think he would have been a really good pro.
You are a big proponent, obviously, of the 6 to 8 reps for muscle growth. This question is from BA85. Muz, for chest or any body part for that fact, if your form is correct, tempo spot on, the amount of sets is low, and you're working in that sweet spot of 6 to 8, but no growth, do you think of upping the reps to, say, 10 plus will assist in growth? Maybe
I actually do. Yeah, I actually do 4 to 8 reps. I think is the growth. Is matter like 4 to 6 reps is really the growth zone. I think because you can push some pretty heavy weight and get 4 reps out, that are good form, especially if you have a training partner giving you a little help. And I just found that I grew the best in that. So if I'm going to bench press, I'll obviously start. Let's say I was doing 405 on the bench. I would do 135. I'd do 225, for maybe 6 to 8 reps just to warm up. Then I go to 315. I go to 405. And if, when I first started doing 405, I was only getting 1 or 2. But you have to do that, to be able to, get to that next level. So I might do, 2 reps with 405. But then I'll do a drop set and I'll take 2 plates off each side and I'll do 225 for another 4. So I'm still getting 6 reps out, but the first 2 were so heavy that's really what's tearing down those fibers and making me grow. And the key is to keep pushing yourself. It's very scary to lift weight that you're not capable of doing for a lot of reps. I'm in the gym now, and I didn't bench press free weights for 18 years. Because I had the shoulder problem. So now it took me a long time to build up. Now I could do like 185, and I'm probably never going to push myself past that because I don't need to set any records and I don't need to wear down my shoulders any faster. But when I do it, I have a guy in the gym who spots me. I'll ask one of the trainer guys there. I'll say, look, just get me through 3 or 4, get me through 4 reps. I'd probably do the first 2 myself, and then I'm going to probably need a little help. And just by him giving me just a little bit of help and me pushing through that zone, eventually I'm going to get 4. Eventually I'll get 6 probably reps, and that'll probably be the highest I go. But that's how you get through it. If you're not constantly working through those trouble zones and you do the same exact weight for the same amount of reps every single workout, you're not going to grow. You have to push past those plateaus, and it's not fun and it's scary. But if you have a good spotter, you can do it.
This question is about, and this is a topic that as far as coaching and the different types of clients that you've had and, trying to maximize what you have with the mold of clay that you're working with, have you ever had someone that did not appear to have good, quote unquote, good bodybuilding genetics at first, but over time developed a great physique or had bad genetics obvious from the start?
I've had multiple people like that have amazed me, that had what I thought was the worst genetics of all time, and that they would never, and especially I've had clients that are older who started with me. I'm like, they're never going to ever look really good. If I can just get them in shape, that'll be a monumental thing. And I've had them turn pro. I've had them win pro shows, in the masters category, of course. But it's amazing how some people, you don't know what their true potential is if they're just starting, and that's the key. When I went and posed for Bob Grushkin back in 1991, I had decided I had just left medical school. I think it was 92. I had left medical school, took a year off, and I wanted to become a bodybuilder. I was bodybuilding, but I wanted to give it 100%. And I hadn't really started I hadn't really done any major cycles or anything like that yet. So I go, and my friend Doug takes me to Bob's house, and I'm posing for Bob. And, I tell Bob my whole story and everything like that. And Bob's like, oh, I said, do you think I could ever win my class at a national level show? He's like, well, maybe you should go back to medical school. So he's like, but he goes, prove me wrong. He goes, no one's proved me wrong yet, but prove me wrong. And I guess it was 3 years later, Bob Bonham used to have something called Champions Day at the Strong and Shapely Gym in New Jersey. He'd invite anyone who placed top 5 at a national show. And back then, remember, it was only bodybuilding. There wasn't a lot of people doing it. So if you got invited, you were good. And I had won my class at the Junior Nationals in 95. And I show up at Champions Day. I'm like 300 pounds now, and I'm training there. And Bob Grushkin's there, and with all his, his guys he works with. And he came up to me, he goes, "You're the first person. You proved me wrong." He goes, so you never know. You can't. Sometimes you just can't tell. Some people work hard. They have good genetics. You just don't see it initially, and you can. It's deceptive. I always tell people, never put limits on yourself. Never say I can't do this or I can't do that. Have a vision in your head of what you want to look like and go after it. But go after it 100%. That means there's no excuses. There's no, I couldn't make it to the gym because I'm sick, or no, I had to go to my relative's house and that's why I couldn't stick to the diet. There's no exceptions. I love when Nick Walker says I never missed a meal in 5 years. That's how I was. And if you want to be the best, that you have to have that mind.
When you mix the GH powder with the liquid. For how many days can you use it? For example, you mix 10 IU. How many days do you have to use it before it goes bad?
Right. A lot of this came about, back in the day when they had Humatrope and Protropin, they used to say 2 weeks, okay, for it. Then Serostim came out with growth hormone for the AIDS patients. They got a use patent on that. And what they were doing is they were putting 18 IUs in a vial, and they were putting 7 vials in a box. So it was and they were saying it was a week's supply. So no one used 18 IUs a day. So what they would tell these AIDS patients is, use whatever you have to and throw the rest in the garbage. If you don't, let's say you're only using 4 IUs a day, then you throw the rest away because it's no good after that. And they were putting sterile water in it. So people thought, oh, it's the water which is not making it last too long. So people say if you use bacteriostatic water, it'll last long. Now bacteriostatic water just inhibits the growth of bacteria. But what happens is growth hormone is a very convoluted, long, big protein molecule, and it's twisted in a certain configuration. And when you put it into water, what happens is the water starts getting in between the molecules and starts breaking it apart. So over time, the GH breaks down a little bit. How fast that happens, it probably depends on how the temperature it's kept at. You can't freeze GH because that ruins it as well. So you got to keep it in the refrigerator. And once it's mixed, I always keep it in the refrigerator anyway because I just think it's better in a controlled environment like that. But it usually, like I said, 2 weeks is what they say it usually lasts. But I think it lasts longer than that. Even if you lose 10% of the potency of it, it probably will last a month, I would say, once it's mixed. But 2 weeks is a good, safe estimate. Now, there's a company called Genentech that made the original Protropin. And now they have a product they've had it for a while. It's called liquid Nutropin. And just for historical sense, the original Protropin was actually 192 amino acid sequence. And they found out, well, actually Lilly proved that they were wrong, that the GH sequence wasn't 192 amino acids, actually it was 191 amino acids. So they made a mistake. And so when Protropin, when they redid it, they called it Nutropin, NU, but they meant because the new GH, and they had corrected the sequence. But what they had discovered was that if they mixed the growth hormone into a acidic environment, so an acidic buffer, so the water they called it acid water. It was there was some hydrochloric acid, very dilute in there. The acidity of the water made the GH molecule contract, and when it contracted, it held itself in a configuration that the water couldn't get inside of it. And they found that the liquid Nutropins, at least they said they were good for 24 months. So they would sell them actually as liquids. They were not powders where you had to mix. And the truth of the matter is they probably lasted 20 years, these things. They were so potent. Because I had forgotten I had some in my refrigerator. And 10 years later, I found them. And I used them and they were still potent. So the liquid Nutropin to me is probably the if you can get a hold of it, is probably the best stuff to use because it never goes bad, because it's in that acidic environment. And some people say, well, can you mix it with acidic water? I don't know it. I don't think you can do it. I don't know the formula. I wouldn't even know how to do that. But the liquid Nutropin seems to be the most stable of all the GHs.
So this one is about the Post-Olympia Grand Prix. Do you think, and this is a good question, it's a relevant question because, I know you and Chris Aceto were talking about Samson Dowda and Andrew Jack and, how much they've competed over the course of the last 18 months. Do you think the Post-Olympia Grand Prix competitions of the past provide an opportunity for the athlete and their coach to tweak certain things in the hopes of perfecting the peak for the next year's Olympia? Or were each of those competitions unique preps that can't be applied to a future Olympia? Essentially, would it be a week or two of peak testing what works, what doesn't?
Yeah, in theory, it sounds correct. Like if you're hitting multiple shows, you can try different things, maybe carb up a little more, maybe use a little more diuretic or a little less diuretic and see what works. The problem is a lot of these guys, when they get to that post-Olympia, they go off, they're not as strict on their diet and they start, eating extra food. If you ask Lee Priest, he was horrendous on the air. Him and Paul Dillette used to cheat their asses off the whole European tour. And so they never looked as good as they did at the Olympia. So for people who are very disciplined, it could be a really good learning experience about, what works for your body and what doesn't. I remember when Kevin Levrone, I think he placed 5th at the 98 Olympia, which is the one Ronnie Coleman, the first one he won. Flex Wheeler was 2nd, Astor was 3rd. And Levrone looked huge at that show. He just didn't dry out enough. I don't know if he didn't use any diuretics or what, but then he went on the European tour after that, and he was beating everyone. He won more shows than anyone. He probably made more money than Ronnie did at the Olympia on that European tour. He won probably 4 or 5 or 6 of the tour shows because he just dried out and he looked better than everyone, and everyone else got worse. So it could definitely be used as an advantage for a person who's disciplined. For people who are not disciplined and like to eat, it could be a disaster. So, it is what you make of it, I guess,